My guest is a candidate for sheriff of Coleman County, Chad Whaley, and you've been around for a while, haven't you, Chad?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. January will actually make 27 years for me at the Coleman County Sheriff's Office.
27 years. You don't look that old.
Well, I started back in the jail in the 1900s.
Were you in jail or are you working the jail?
No, sir. January 20th, 99, I began as a corrections officer, corrections deputy there in the jail when it was still in the courthouse.
So what you've done is you worked up to the ranks.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I spent about 15 months in the jail. Had an opportunity to go to the police academy. From there, obviously, I went and started my career patrolling and worked as a patrol deputy after that for several years before moving on from there.
How important is it for the individuals that are in the sheriff's department to attend the police academy?
Well, if you're wanting to have a career in law enforcement, that's really where it's at. That's what everybody envisioned. When you say law enforcement, people think blue lights and patrol cars, and that's the minimum. You want to make sure that you get the academy, and for us, it's also a pay raise. If you go from being a corrections officer and get through the academy, then that's a pay raise as well. So it's beneficial for sure.
The academy is not like it's portrayed on TV either, is it?
I've had several really good friends who went through that were part of the military, and for me, when I went through in Selma, they ran it pretty much like boot camp. Now, obviously, not as difficult as what boot camp is, I'm sure, but it was run with more or less drill instructors. We marched everywhere, running, push-ups. It's very physical, and it's designed to stress you. They want to stress you out to make sure that you can handle the stress in your career.
That's it. And you mentioned something that's very important. This is a very stressful job simply because it's day-to-day activity and dealing with individuals that you may not know who they are or what they've done.
Absolutely. And this is something I tell people all the time. I've been involved in the interview process for new hires for the past several years. And that's one of the things I always talk to the people that are, thinking about getting into law enforcement. You're either made for this job or you're not. And it's not a knock against someone if you choose not to do this. But I think, I know for me, within probably a month of starting with the sheriff's office, I knew this was it, that I was made to do this job and nothing else would ever, I guess, scratch that itch.
It's not a matter of finding that adrenaline high. It's a matter of knowing that you've got a job to do and that every move is crucial.
Well, I think the longevity, like I said, I think most people get into it. I know I did. Thinking of law enforcement, it's you want to drive fast and shoot guns. That's the appeal. But the reality is the ones that stay, the ones that make it a career, you see the difference that you make.
There's a lot of public relations work and also being not only a deputy but also a sheriff. I mean, a lot.
Absolutely. And that's one area I've been extremely blessed in. I was a school resource officer for 12 years of my career, and that actually led to my position now as the public information officer, director of communications, where my primary job is community relations and media relations as well.
You keep bringing up points that seem so interesting. The school resource officer, those kids depend upon you, and you depend upon the kids because that's kind of like Santa Claus. They'll tell Santa Claus anything, and once you become their friend, they'll tell that resource officer just about anything.
Well, if in my opinion, if you want to make the biggest difference in law enforcement, the schools is the easiest place. You have a lack of a better term, a captive audience. Mm-hmm. I know at my last school, I was at Hansville for the last 10 years. I was a resource officer, and I had 1,300 kids on that campus. And your job is to protect them, but it's also to build those relationships. You get to get in the classroom and teach. You're also responsible for the staff. You get close to the parents. So it's not just the walls and the halls of the school. It literally is. You become embedded in that community and in the lives of so many people. It's fantastic.
You mentioned the fact that you drive cars and so forth fast. Did you ever play Cowboys and Indians when you were a kid growing up?
Yes, sir. Cops and robbers. I was.
Cops and robbers. Okay.
I will say that I was always the cops. So I've been preparing this for a long time, I guess. So.
Those are fun games.
Yes,
as
sir.
a kid, and that it broadened your horizons down the road too. And it's like you said, this might have set the pattern for you to become a sheriff's deputy and a candidate for sheriff.
Well, and for me, and not to be flippant about it by any stretch, but I grew up in the 80s where, superheroes were on every channel that you turned on, all the action heroes. And I never wanted to be the bad guy. I never wanted to be the villain. You know, Captain America was always my favorite hero, and it was, you know, one of those things. I think you really do get stuck in that mentality of, I want to be the good guy, and I want to make a difference.
What about, you know, I was talking to Sheriff Gentry. I said, you know, it's a matter of laying groundwork in order to develop that relationship you have in the community.
Well, and for me, like I said, when I look back at my career, I truly believe the good Lord has opened so many doors for me that have led me to this point, because, you know, even from my time on patrol, obviously, and getting that background and that knowledge, being in the schools and developing all those relationships, but that also opened up the doors for me to do so many public outreach programs. I teach so many classes to the public, to the churches, to businesses, and obviously the schools. And then getting in this role that I'm in now, I'm in charge of our Citizens Academy, our Youth Leadership Academy, and then all of our senior centers that we reach out to. Anything dealing with the public has come through my desk.
You know, it's very comforting. I've got one of my businesses is out in the county, and it's very comforting to see a sheriff's deputy patrolling in that area 2 or 3 times a day.
Yes, sir.
And simply because it's a feeling of security, you know?
Absolutely.
You know, locks keep honest people honest. That's all that's for, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just that presence, you know, that's something that I know that I've experienced in my career. We started in 99, we had, I think, 65 employees. We're up to roughly 170 now, but the population growth has been so large. You know, in the last 25 years, we've grown from 73,000 to roughly 93,000 now.
Well, so according to the FCC, we're 110,000 people in Coleman County.
It's a lot. It's
Can we build a wall around Coleman County like Trump suggested?
Well, and the problem is Coleman County is super special. I'm very biased, but I'll say Coleman County is the best county in the state, maybe in the country, but I can definitely say in the state. But the secret's out. So we've got so many people coming in.
How important is it for the Sheriff's Department to work with the federal ICE department?
Well, it's important, any type of collaboration. You know, we've been very fortunate with Coleman City PD, you know, with Wallace State having their police department down there. And then obviously when you get into the state and federal agencies, it's just like the community relations. You know, there's not enough of us to do everything that needs to be done. So having those relationships is absolutely vital.
Now, you know, we're just running, you know, because people want to know who Chad Whaley is. And, you know, the thing is, we have a lot of drugs here in Coleman County.
Yes, sir.
And do we have a drug task force?
Well, we had a drug task force for many years, and just like everything else, crime, it evolves. So either we have to evolve with it or we get left behind. And a specified drug unit became outdated to where it wasn't something that was productive the way that the drugs were being sold and used.
How do we reinstitute that?
Well, what we have instead of a specified drug unit, we have a collaborative investigative unit to where we have multiple guys that do work drugs on a daily basis, but they also work hand in hand with the guys working property crimes that are working crimes against persons, because that communication is really what makes the difference, because they're all connected anyway.
You know, you're in that patrol car 5, 6, 8, 10 hours a day, big county, and you got a big responsibility because the weight of those citizens are on your shoulders, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's one of those situations. Again, the stress of the job, if you let it get to you, it'll eat you alive. And we always tell the guys, the new hires especially, you've got to find a way to manage that stress. For me, I don't have any hobbies except my kids, my wife, and working out. That's how I relieve the stress.
When I was a kid, when I first moved to Coleman, I had a tree fall in my backyard.
Yes, sir.
And after I got it cut up, it left a stump.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my frustration stump. Every afternoon when I got off work, I'd go outside and get my axe. And
yes,
I whittle away. It took about a year to get that thing whittled down to the
That's
ground.
right. That's
but,
right.
You know, you have to have an outlet. And so it is true with every sheriff's deputy. They have to have an outlet to do something.
Absolutely. You know, and burnout in this line of work is very common. And that's why, you know, because people don't call 911 because they're having a great day.
Yeah.
You know, every time we go to a call, there's a good chance that we're dealing with that individual's worst day. So it can be very stressful.
And you have no idea what's behind that 911 call,
No,
Chad Whaley.
Now, scariest thing we do, without a doubt, are traffic stops. You know, I know everybody sees social media and they watch these encounters, and it's easy to paint us in a corner as far as, us being overreactive. But in reality, and especially in today's society, even in a place as special as Coleman, when we walk up to that window, we may be walking up to a grandma on her way to church, or a convicted felon that's got a gun in their hand. We never know.
Or somebody that just had a fight with his wife.
Yes, sir.
So you never know. I never thought, you mentioned church, I never thought I'd have to have a sheriff's deputy at my church,
Yes, sir.
But this is the time, the era that we live in now, simply because back years ago, crime, these people got out of control, and it all starts at home, does it not?
Yes, sir.
It all starts at home. As a child, do you discipline your child? Absolutely, the Bible says so. It says,
yes, sir.
It didn't say beat them, it says discipline.
That's right. Well, and I've told parents that. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to get to talk to a lot of parents, a lot of kids, and I tell parents, if you don't discipline your kids now, there's a good chance I'm going to arrest them later.
The election is several months away yet, but you got to work hard and to work diligently. And how can people get in contact with you if there's a church group, a civic organization, or somebody that wants just to invite you over to a neighborhood community? How can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. I do a lot of church security trainings. I've been very fortunate. I kind of took that on back around 2015, and I do it every chance I get. I've had 3 in the past 3 weeks, as a matter of fact, and I've got 1 more I've got to get scheduled. But the easiest way, obviously, if it's something associated through the sheriff's office, they can reach me at email is easy, chwhaley@colemansheriff.org. And then obviously my personal cell phone, anything campaign related, or if they just got questions or want to ask, just call me, 256-255-8031.
When I called you the other day to set up this appointment, I said, holy mackerel, his number's close to my number. The station is 0183. I said, yeah. But anyway, so why should people go to the polls and then vote for you when it's election time?
Well, for me, the biggest thing is, I've been very blessed. Sheriff Gentry has been very good to me. He is, I'll be honest with you, if he was running, obviously I wouldn't. I think he's the best sheriff that Coleman County has probably ever had. And I have been so fortunate to see what he's built. My plan is to take what he's laid the groundwork for and keep it going.
Are you still going to have the sheriff's rodeo?
Absolutely. Everything community related. I would be a fool to do away with anything. If anything, I want to do it bigger and better. And I told the sheriff that, and he laughed. But that's, if I didn't,
big shoes to follow.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, big boots.
If I didn't think, if my plan was not to improve, then I shouldn't be running. Right. And that's always the goal. Take what's already here, and obviously there'll be some changes that will come just based on time. And like I said, crime is cyclical, so we have to keep up with the times.
We'll always have crime.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the best job security in the world, is law enforcement, because we unfortunately live in a fallen creation. We can't do away with evil, but we're going to do everything we can to keep it out of Coleman County.
Chad Whaley, I want to thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Mr. Mosley, I greatly appreciate you having me.
Mr. Father, my name's Ron. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.